Hello and howdy. Welcome to the Do It Big Shit Today podcast. I am Hannah. If this is your first podcast or your first time listening to the Do It Big Shit Today podcast, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here. If you're listening to this in the car, please drive safely. If you're listening to this while on a run or doing a workout or going for a walk or a stroll, I see you crushing it. And if you're just listening to this, hanging out at home, doing the dishes, I appreciate you sharing your vibe and letting the pod be part of that evening or that day, being a part of your life. So this episode, I thought it'd be super cool, given that this will be the 60th episode that I'll release. I found it very interesting for some reason that throughout this almost 2 years, more like a year and a half, of recording these episodes, that I really ought to jot down some learning lessons. Because I've had a range of humans on this podcast. I've had entrepreneurs, I've had self-starters, I've had ultra marathon legends, I've had people that have ran 20, 30, 40 plus marathons. I've had some amazing humans on this podcast. And while I'm so excited for more guests that are lined up to come on, I wanted to take an episode and share all of the things that I've learned from these 59 previous episodes of interviewing over 40 people. I think I've taken some notes down at each time I have an episode and I release it and I kind of make the bio and like, that's great information. Or I jot notes down. And so going through my notes, I've put together it's 7 key intertwining themes between each episode and the guests. So that's where that's super cool is when you strip down all the episodes, strip down the name, the people, their locations, their achievements, you'll see their mindset is very similar. And I kind of made this correlation myself. And I was like, dude, I got to share this. Because there's an underlying theme to all of these amazing humans. There are things that they do that make them who they are and make them inspirational and make them go-getters and make them people that inspire others to dream bigger, achieve more, go for more, live the life that they were set to live rather than stay stagnant. So I've got my coffee, I've got my water, I've got my lacrosse ball underneath my feet. I'm rolling out my arches. I hope my Cairo legend, who is also on this podcast, hears this and smiles that I am multitasking, but also getting my feet a bit loosened up a bit. So let's tuck in. So for those who aren't aware, and I went back because it's been a year and a half, I released my first episode in October of 2022, October 13th to be exact. And this episode this podcast even came to fruition of me feeling very stuck in a corporate job, knowing there was more out there, knowing that I could get out of the hamster wheel that I think as we get older, we tend to just fall into. It's just a natural progression. You not taking life by the horns, but letting life happen to you, I guess is the best way of putting that. And so I was working for a large corporate company at a job where I felt I had very little power or control or say, and working my ass off, and something was just missing. It was the passion wasn't there, the excitement wasn't there. And so I came to the point where I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go find my own excitement. And for the weekend, I went and drove out to Big Bear. And for those who aren't familiar geographically with LA, Big Bear is about 2 hours east of like the west side of LA, obviously, but like just keep going about 2 hours in and you'll hit Big Bear. It's beautiful. That's actually where my 100K is going to be in October. I drove out to Big Bear and I just let myself sit in nature. I went on these beautiful hikes and I just put my phone away and I kind of let all the distractions in my life go and just focus on what I wanted. And I had to fully remove myself from, the busyness of Los Angeles and just sink into nature to figure out what I wanted. And by the end of this weekend, I had this grand idea about reaching out to people and just asking, like, what are you doing? What are you up to? Anything you'd like to share? And throughout that kind of spur of thought, I was like, what if I shared that with others? Back when I was younger and I was a bit more didn't give a fuck attitude, I guess you could say. I was in college. I felt very stuck being a Division I athlete. So when I graduated, I was like, oh my God, the sky's the limit. I found a job that allowed me to be remote. I moved to New York, and suddenly when I got there, knew no one. And I just kind of did things that were super adventurous because it was just like, why not? Why would I not do this? Why would I not be scared and uncomfortable? And I kind of lost that spark when I fell into this corporate job after moving to LA. And I was determined to find that again. And so when I went on this hike in Big Bear over the weekend, it kind of allowed that spark to rekindle. And it was this amazing thing. And so I came home, I put together a title, and the title of the podcast, Do Epic Shit Today. It's, some people are like, man, that's a mouthful. I'm like, dude, it's perfect because it's do, you're doing an action, epic, the verb to describe that action, shit, the amazing, all-encompassing word of runners, self-starters, entrepreneur, trendsetters, go-getters. I had painters, real estate agents, photographers starting from scratch, moving on, like couch hopping so they could follow their dreams. It's not just a running podcast. It's not just a entrepreneur podcast. This is a podcast for people who do things that are scary and uncomfortable. And then, of course, the last word of the entire title today, which is kind of an accountability word, because I think sometimes we have these grand ideas, we have these grand plans, and life happens. Even if it's a small step forward, taking the moment to do it, to do what you said you were going to do that day. Whether it's, wanting to be a healthier lifestyle, maybe that's the day you quit drinking. If it's maybe going to take 10,000 steps, let's start today. Why would we not start today? What can I do today to make that goal happen? As we get older and as life happens, we say we're going to do something tomorrow, and then tomorrow occurs and we don't do it. The word today is a beautiful way to take action now in what you said you're going to do, because you're worth holding yourself to that standard. And if you have not read the bio of this epic podcast, I will read it to you. And it kind of fully encapsulates, this must be my new favorite word, it fully encompasses what I just said. And it is, the Do Epic Shit Today podcast is breaking the norm on what's expected in today's society by discussing the entrepreneur mindset, pushing your physical limits, mental health discussions, and flipping a finger to playing life safe. No topic is off the table. This podcast is dedicated to those looking for inspiring content and that do epic shit daily. Bada bing, bada boom. So, with that being said, let's jump into some of the rad humans I've had on here and break it down. So, first and foremost, the biggest commonality between all the guests that I've had on have a sense of recognizing their worth and not settling for the mundane. So that's number one. When you recognize that you are worth having a life that you are meant to have, something switches. If you're not happy in your job, if you're not happy with your current lifestyle, if you're not happy with the people that surround you, you have the ability to change it. No one is in control of your life but you. Yes, employers, yes, families have a say. But at the end of the day, if you take emotion out of it, you have control over your life. So if there is something that you're doing in your lifestyle or in your life that you don't like or you don't love, you have the power to change it. And that's whether starting applying for a new job, looking at business plans, reaching out to a friend who you saw just start a business and you want to know how they did it, as we get older, we forget that we have control over our lives. If you are at a job you don't like, you can change it. If you are surrounding yourself with friends who aren't the role models that you were looking for, or the support system you were looking for, or if your partner is not showing up for you, you have the control to communicate it and change it. And I think that's what's so fucking cool about some of these folks is they know their standard, they know their worth, and they do not settle for the mundane. They do not settle for less. And that ownership, I think, is life-changing and empowering in itself. So that's number one. Recognizing your worth and not settling for the mundane will take you leaps and bounds farther than you thought possible. Number two, it's not how much you know, but who you know. Your people that you surround yourself with will either raise the bar or lower your ceiling. And something I've experienced firsthand with this podcast alone, I've actually been able to level up. I have people on this podcast, and this is why I share the podcast, is I hope it trickles to you. But the people I have on the podcast, not all, but about 99.9% have surrounded themselves with people who are willing to help, willing to mentor. They're willing to mentor other people. So for example, and I'm sure this quote has been heard a lot, that the people who you surround yourself with are who you become. It's kind of like a social diet. If you surround yourself with people who are not on the track or the trajectory that you're going on, it's going to affect your potential. By asking a lot of my podcast guests what pushes them, what fuels them, their inspiration, their community, just through me reaching out to podcast guests and them reaching out to me being like, oh, you interviewed my buddy. Oh, you interviewed this person. Oh, you know this person? And I'm like, holy shit, you all know each other. There's a sense of beauty in that like-minded people bind together. Kind humans are friends with kind humans. Inspiring humans are friends with other inspiring humans. When I moved to LA, I think I had one friend that I knew. In 4 years, I have friends I had one that just demolished, just fucking crushed it at Ironman Worlds in Kona. I've had one friend start her home business. I've had another friend set out to be a professional painter. I've had one friend who is a video editor for commercials. I have another friend who's an absolute ball buster and does races all over the fucking world and just smashes them. And this is not a boast statement, but when you surround yourself with people who lift you up, they also attract other people who lift you up. If you lift other people up, other people are going to want to lift you up. And so through this connection of just being a good human, you'll notice there becomes a very, I want to say gentle, but a very organic string between all of these folks. And if you surround yourself with the right people, you help others, they help you, and you do it because you're a good person. And I think when you have that sort of, like I mentioned in number one, recognizing your worth, and it becomes unshakable, you have no problem helping others. And so it's not how much you know, but it's who you know. As at the end of the day, connections are key. And like I mentioned in my point previously, you have the ability to control the people you have in your life. Number three, dream big, then double it. If your dreams, goals, aspirations do not scare you, they are not big enough. This to me was huge. I am a huge fan of Jen Sincero. She's the author of You Are a Badass. I think she has like 3 or 4 different subsets of You Are a Badass, like You Are a Badass at making money, You Are a Badass at enter here. I have all of her books. I have a signed copy. I drove to Glendale to go meet her. It was awesome. I got teary-eyed. This is where I actually heard this quote the first time. I picked up one of her books when I was living in New York. Just being in New York is just, the energy of it is a game changer. But I picked up her book and I read it, and she kept saying this quote over and over. And I was like, dude, we get it. Like, dream big, blah, 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 blah. And she elaborated it later in the book. And it's dream big and then double it. If your dreams, goals don't scare you, they aren't big enough. And in this chapter, she broke down a couple things. The first thing is, and it's just very, hopefully not morbid, you get one life. One life. And so you really have to own the fact that it's on you to fucking live it. Boom. That's the just straight up version. The second version is, if you have small goals, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't expect a mountainous change right away. So I think I don't know if everyone on here is aware of SMART goals. I'm not talking about those. I think it's great to have small goals, small steps in the right direction. I'm talking about the goals like, I'm starting my own business. I need to raise $150,000 by the end of 2024 so I can start my business on January 1st of 2025. And you have no fucking clue you're going to raise that much money. That is a big goal. Or signing up for a 250-mile ultra marathon and realize I've always wanted to do this. This is scary AF. I have one life, and so I'm going to do it. And that was kind of how she broke it down. And from that mindset, I have been able to, and while it's uncomfortable, I don't think there's ever a time when you have big ass goals and it's like, oh, this is cozy, because then they're not big enough. But there comes a moment where you recognize the uncomfortable, you relish in it, and you start to become okay with being uncomfortable because you know there's a payoff. These types of goals, this type of mindset is what completely switches the trajectory of your life. And just be balls to the wall committed. Are you thinking of all the ways to make your dream happen? If it's financials that you need, if it's time that you need, if it's something that you need, are you doing what you can to make that goal achievable? And I think at the end of the day, if you get scared, which you should, because that means the goal is big enough, you have to remember that you get one life. If you're in your 20s, you get to be in your 20s for X amount of years, and you're in your 30s. Then you're in your 40s, and then your 50s. And a huge motivator for me is, people always ask, like, what's your biggest fear? And aside from losing my loved ones, it's me getting to the end of my life and being like, what if? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I take that risk? Why didn't I start a business? Why didn't I share more on this podcast? Why did I not talk about my anxiety? There comes a point where you have to look at your life and be like, you get one. And so you have to be relentless with your goals and your dreams. Okay, that was number 3. Now we're on to number 4. You are capable of much more than you give yourself credit for. And I love this quote so much that I'm actually getting it printed on t-shirts and adding it to our merch store. And I think just take a minute and let that sink in. You are capable of much more than you give yourself credit for. And not to single a group out, but this theme is so strong with runners that it's almost brought up every single time I have a runner on this podcast. And I'll tell you why. And as a runner who is training for 100K, I am doing shit that I used to say never about. And there's this beautiful bond between pushing yourself physically and realizing that that can correlate to every other aspect of your world. Because something happens when you hit a certain achievement, whether it's a half marathon or 5K, or you got your best mile time or marathon time. Because you're able to achieve a goal and you've held yourself accountable to achieving that goal, there comes a level of curiosity where it's like, what else can I apply this self-discipline to? And through that reiteration of achieving a goal that you set out that you're going to achieve, there comes this sort of spark. It's like, I didn't know I could do that. And then I did it. And there's a level of accountability and self-discipline there that I think goes hand in hand with setting goals. But humor me for a moment. And this is where you see a lot of runners or people that work out and are disciplined in the art of it. You see a lot of them start to have passion projects, side hustles, excelling at work. And it's this beautiful parallel. You realize you can accomplish all this other shit in your social life, financial life, career life, passion project life. And it becomes this beautiful aha moment. And I think that's where this newfound love for running is. And you realize you can apply it to other areas of your life. And it's a beautiful thing to watch as a human, as a friend. It's an amazing thing to go through. And it's so rewarding. So that's why I go back to this quote. And that's why I talk about this with a lot of runners that I have on here. Because they're usually not just running. There's something else. There's a passion project. There's a side hustle. They're excelling at their career. They're doing something else that's not just running and pushing their limits. You are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for. Number 5, follow your gut. And you can follow your gut, follow your intuition. But a lot of people I've had on here, they've expressed that because they listened to their gut, because they listened to their intuition, it allowed them to leave the job they were unhappy in at the right time and start a new one. They took opportunities that others would have said no to because they saw the bigger picture and followed their gut. And breaking it down, following your gut is not me expecting you to have your head pressed against your stomach and be like, oh, which way? It's more of that kind of tingly feeling where you feel in your mind and your heart that you need to do something else than what everybody else is telling you. And there may not always be logistics and facts backing it up, but there's something very true into you that's telling you otherwise. And that's your intuition. And it's happening and it's tingling and it's occurring for a reason. I'm not a master of mine yet, but I've gotten pretty damn good of when to leave jobs, when to ask for a raise, when to push my fitness limits. This is a project that fell on my lap that has no pay, but I know it's going to lead to something greater. And I feel that. And so there's going to be a moment where on paper things don't seem right, but your body and your heart and your mind are telling you to do something otherwise. And what I'm saying is lean into it. You got to follow your gut. Number 6, the only difference from people who achieve their goals than the ones that don't is action. And I put in parentheses on my show notes, calculated action. I believe that some folks, myself included at one point, waited for all of my shit to be in order, all of my ducks to be in a row, the business plan done. This has to be absolutely to the T complete. Everything had to be in its rightful place before I could do something, before I could take action, before I could change jobs, before I could start a podcast, before I could start, a fitness goal that I think for someone of my 6'2" stature, be like, what the hell are you doing, lady? People wait for all of that to be in order. They wait for all the chips to be lined up. They wait for all the I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. And to be quite frank, there may not be a time where all of your shit is completely in order. I believe what stops people from going after their goals is because they're waiting for everything to be picture perfect. They're waiting for the right time for their boss to put time on their calendar before they ask for a salary increase. Put time on your boss's calendar. People are waiting for the right moment to start a business. Oh, it's summer. People are going to be traveling. Fall's better. There will not ever be a perfect time to start. But I think what's the most important part of that are the baby steps moving forward to progression. There will never be a super clear path, but the point is you can always turn left or right. You can turn around, you can adjust. But small steps forward is still progression. And at the end of the day, when you look back after 30 days, you'll start to see that progression. My high school coach, and it's actually a theme that I think LKSD uses, or a saying that they use, he would tell me every practice, your goal is to get 1% better every day. When we're here in 100 days or we're here in a year, you're 100% better. You are 365% better. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to take action. Baby steps are still steps forward. And this was very true with a lot of my business folks. Is I had one guy who created this, I don't know, it was this beyond cool book organizer. And the way that he did the mock-up process was really interesting. And I was like, dude, you got to share this, because I'm sure there are people out there in the world who want to know how you took a concept into your brain and within a matter of a month had a prototype in your hand. And when I asked him that question, how did you do this? How did you take a concept into a tangible? And he was like, I had the concept, and later that night, I found things around my house to make it a prototype. I found construction to find out the shape. I found pencils as the legs. I found, a bread clip as part of the top of the mock-up. He created something that evening because he was like, I wanted to see what it would look like, what it would feel like, what the shape would be, while I wait for the mock-up, while I wait for the meeting with the vendors who would conduct the mock-up the next day. I came home and I created my own initial prototype, so I had something to show them on the call, so I had something to see, so I had something to hold, because it took immediately the thought out of his brain, a concept, and turned it into a tangible. Half a step forward is still moving forward. And the last one, number 7. And I've made so many mistakes in my life. It's insane. You will never have all the answers. So you have to embrace the process and learn to be okay with making mistakes. I think a lot of people also in the running world and the business owners are very open about this, which I appreciate. Life has ebbs and flows, ups and downs. Shit hits the fan. It's inevitable. Mistakes will happen because you cannot know everything. And if you are someone who thinks you know everything, life will humble you. And I say that in a loving way. So because that's how life works, there has to be this sense of okayness and embracing making mistakes. Prime example, you see runners all the time, DNF. And many people, I had Andrew Glaze. He was very upfront and open about his DNFs. He was like, I learned from them every single time. He didn't eat before. He had stomach issues. He ate shit and fell. And each time he made a mistake, he's like, I learned. That was it. He didn't make it into a bigger deal. He took it as a note, a learning lesson, and moved on. Another guest who I just had, Rob, he holds himself accountable. He works his ass off. He does that big shit. But he never takes life too seriously. And I'm not going to pretend I know Rob intricately because I've only had him on here as a podcast guest. But he's one of our recent episodes. And maybe that's why I'm bringing it up, because I just had him on. The long distances, the 250, the trans-cons, the 50-mile races, all of that completely unfazes him. Unfazed. He's like, if I make a mistake, if I don't finish the race, I'll try again. I mess up, I try again. And there's something so beautiful about that level of casualness with making mistakes. Now, I do want to preface that I think there is a balance that yes, you have to learn from them, but there is something really amazing about trying something, not liking it, or failing and trying again. The amount of jobs that I've had right out of college is insane. I tried absolutely everything. I took an aptitude test when I was in high school. It was like, you're really good at managerial and organizational skills. And I was like, no shit. But I just wanted to be sure. And so I tried a sales job. I tried being a wedding planner. I tried being a data warehouse manager. I'm someone who learns by doing. I learn. I need to make the mistake, and then I learn, and then I don't make that mistake again. But I think to have the understanding that you won't have all the answers and mistakes happen, the best thing you can do is embrace that and just be ready to learn from your mistakes. Okay, so that was number 7. You won't have all the answers. So remember that it is okay to make mistakes. Just learn from them. All right, jumping on to rapid fire questions. It's kind of funny because I'm asking myself these own questions, but I feel like it's part of the pod. It's part of the pod. So, what is something that I am the most excited for that hasn't happened yet in 2024? So, I am headed off to, actually on Thursday in a few days, or a week, to a race called Hood to Coast. And Hood to Coast is basically, it's a relay race of approximately 200 miles with a team of epic humans, 2 cars, and big ass goals. So we basically start on Mount Hood in Oregon, and it's beautiful. I've only seen pictures, I've never been. And we, as a team, we relay all the way to Seaside, which is right on the ocean in Oregon. It'll be crazy. You don't sleep, you just keep running because you want to, from start time to end time, you want to be as quick as possible. But I'm really excited to just kind of go on an adventure like this. I haven't been on an adventure in quite a while, and I'm just excited to just put the job on the hold and live a little. What drives you? Inspiration, goal, or aspiration? What drives me? I think a couple things drive me. But at the end of the day, I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be the best Hannah that I can be. And not for anyone else, because I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone, but because I know that I'm worth holding that standard of being the best version of myself. What is one thing that I want listeners to know about me? Or what is one thing I want listeners to know about myself? Grammarly, that didn't make sense, did it? I'll have to edit that. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll keep it in and just kind of keep the vibe going strong. The authenticity and rawness. So, something to know about me. Truth be told, I'm a lady in LA. I've got a rad husband, and I'm still figuring all of this shit out. I love this podcast. I'm learning a ton. I'm training for 100K. I got shooketh when I was in Big Bear a few weeks ago and was very much humbled by the altitude. So I will be making it a priority once I come back from Hood to Coast, that for the next 7 weeks, my ass is going to be in altitude until race day. But I don't have all the answers. I learn by doing. I learn from making mistakes. I adjust and I keep pushing forward. So yeah, I hope that comes across. Current go-to snack. Honestly, I'm not really snacking right now, but right now I've been really into like smoothie bowls. Like I will create my own. I made homemade granola for Ruben, my husband, and I kind of burnt it, but he's still eating it, which is nice. But I'm kind of making my own smoothie bowls and exploring with, adding chia seeds and coconut and berries and my homemade granola and making it all, lovely and pretty, and then just demolishing it in like 30 seconds. So I'm super into that right now. I don't know if that's necessarily a snack, but it's food and it tastes good. So I'm doing that as a snack. And then 3 things that I'm grateful for. I have my husband. I like words. I'm a words of affirmation. And one of the notes he left around for me to find is, do you ever sit back and reflect on your greatest achievements? You've done some pretty incredible things in this life. And he kind of lists out all of the things that I've done. And I've got a really special one. I really do. So I'm beyond thankful for him, because I think we can be our worst critics. And so sometimes it's nice having a person in your corner who's rooting for you. Second thing I'm grateful for the 10-mile run that I went on this morning. It was beautiful. I saw like 15 bunny rabbits, which was so cute, little fluffy tails. And the last thing I'm grateful for this podcast. The people that I get feedback from, the people that share their thoughts, that share their, the rawness of how this podcast has helped them. The podcast growing and having some really cool guests on. Just seeing what this community is becoming has made me really excited for the future for it. And I don't take that for granted. So I want to say I'm grateful for all of you that are listening. So that is episode 60. This is 7 things or some of the lessons that I've learned from having 40 plus people on this podcast. And I hope I did them justice. I also hope that if you're still listening and you're on a run, you're enjoying and crushing your run. If you're hanging out at home, enjoy your evening, your morning, your day. And I appreciate all of you. And I'll see you guys on the next episode.